Look, Bronwyn, I want to start by getting your reaction to this nuclear debate. That was quite a meeting, the world's financial institutions all pledging to support nuclear. Albanese is looking more and more out of step, isn't he?
Well, it's worse than that. You were talking about the smartest people in the world, and Albanese certainly is not one of them. He really is elbow the trot, and he was never expected to be a leader of anything. So what we're seeing is that the speech that Dutton gave today was a really very fine speech. And his response to questions showed that he's on top of his brief, he knows what he's about. And he outlined a plan that said, and pointed out, among other things, that with the development of AI and other industries, that the demand for more power, reliable power, is going to increase, not decrease, and that intermittent power can't do it. And so Albanese's pathetic little interludes, I think, just show how pathetic he really is. I think Peter Dutton also made the point that immediately they agreed to the AUKUS deal and said, fine, we can have nuclear subs. They'd really laid to rest the fear of nuclear in this country. But they're so desperate to have anything to say. When they lost the voice, they lost their mojo, they lost their direction. They really are just scrambling around. Yeah. And so we really have to say, we're listening to the people who've got sensible plans and we know it's good for the country.
Caleb, that point that Bronwyn just made, that discrepancy between the government's embrace of nuclear-powered submarines, but then its rejection of nuclear for energy more broadly, that is something the coalition is now starting to seize on as part of its arguments. Do you think that'll be convincing?
I think it is. Well, I mean, the argument from the government is entirely nonsensical. I mean, how can you possibly say that it is safe to have submarines swimming around in the ocean powered by nuclear energy, but it's not safe to have nuclear energy in places in Australia that are some of the most geologically stable parts of the world? It is a nonsensical argument. And we saw that in the reaction from the government when Dutton said, well, here are the 9 odd locations on which we want to put nuclear reactors. I mean, we had these silly memes being put forward by ministers of the government, for heaven's sake, saying, you know, we're going to have 3-eyed fish and your children are going to have 2 heads and all this sort of stuff, because they know they've lost the moral argument. There is broad support now in Australia for nuclear energy. So they fell for the 3-card trick and went for the old stuff from the 80s, you know, Chernobyl, and then later, of course, Fukushima. Supposedly it's all going to fall apart if we have nuclear energy. We know that's not going to happen. And to the point you made, Bronwyn, about the reliance on extra power to fund things like AI, you look to the US. In the last couple of days, Microsoft, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, has paid for 20 years for a nuclear reactor to be recommissioned so they can have power exclusively for themselves to fund AI technology. Now, if that does not tell you that the biggest companies in the world are full bore on nuclear, but Albo says, no, we couldn't possibly have it. I mean, give me a break.
And I think politically, it was actually a really smart move that Peter Dutton announced this policy so far out from the election, because it's giving him time to convince the public. It's giving everyone the time to get used to it. So I think that was a smart move, given initially it might have seemed like a controversial policy.